So how in the world do we make sense of the millions upon millions of species on our planet? I mean, from the tiniest microbe to the biggest blue whale, the sheer diversity of life is, well, it's mind-boggling. Today, we're going to dive into the incredible systems we've created to try and map this amazing tree of life.
Just take a look at this. You've got bugs growing, reproducing, sensing their world. It's a whole miniature ecosystem happening on just one leaf. Now, try to imagine that level of complexity multiplied by every single living thing on Earth. Yeah, the job of organizing all that seems almost impossible, right? But believe it or not, scientists have been chipping away at it for centuries.
So, the very first crack at solving this huge puzzle was to create some kind of universal naming system. You can think of it as the first draft for a massive library of life.
I mean, imagine trying to study an animal that some people call a cougar, others call a puma, and still others call a mountain lion. It would be total chaos. A universal naming system makes sure that a scientist in Brazil and a scientist in Japan are talking about the exact same creature. Everybody's on the same page, speaking the same scientific language.
The solution that stuck is this really elegant method called the binomial system, and it follows three beautifully simple rules. Rule 1, every scientific name has two parts. Rule 2, the first part, which is the genus, always gets a capital letter, and Rule 3, the second part, the species, is always lowercase. That's it. Simple, effective, and totally universal.
And this system works like a set of nesting dolls, you know? It uses a hierarchy, going from the super broad down to the really specific. Let's take us, for example. We start out in the giant kingdom of Animalia. Then we narrow it down through phylum, class, order, family, all the way until we land on our unique scientific name, genus Homo and species Sapiens. Every single known organism has a unique address like this in the great tree of life.
Okay, so a naming system is great, but how do you figure out what something is to begin with, especially if you're just out in the woods? Well, for that, biologists have this really clever tool that works almost like a choose-your-own-adventure book.
It's called a dichotomous key. Now, dichotomous sounds fancy, but all it means is branching into two. The key just gives you a series of choices, two at a time, based on things you can see. You pick the option that matches what you're looking at, and it tells you where to go next until finally you land on the right identification.
So, you want to try one? Let's do it. We're going to use this key to figure out exactly what kind of leaf we're looking at on the next slide. Ready? Let's solve this thing together.
All right, here we go. First choice at step 1. Does the leaf have several small leaflets or one large leaf blade? Ours is definitely one big blade, so that tells us to go to step 3. Now, step 3 asks, is the edge smooth or is it toothed? If you look close, you can see all those little jagged points. It's toothed for sure. And that's it, we've got our answer. It's leaf D. See? Simple and totally logical. But here's the catch. This whole method depends on what we can see with our own eyes. And what happens when looks are deceiving? What happens when what we see doesn't actually tell the true story?
This is the huge problem with relying only on morphology. That's just the scientific word for physical appearance. Sometimes totally unrelated species evolve to look alike because they live in similar environments. A classic example is a dolphin and a shark. They have a similar body shape, but one's a mammal and one's a fish. They're not closely related at all. And the opposite is also true. Sometimes very closely related species can look shockingly different. I mean, a tiny Chihuahua and a massive Great Dane are the exact same species, but you would never guess it just by looking at them.
And this leads us to a really crucial question in modern biology. If we know that appearances can fool us, is there something better, a more reliable, more accurate source of truth that can tell us how all of life is really connected?
Well, it turns out the answer was there all along. It wasn't hidden in what we could see on the outside, but in the microscopic genetic code tucked away inside every single cell. We just had to learn how to read life's master copy.
And here it is, DNA. This absolutely incredible molecule holds the master blueprint for building an organism. And by learning how to compare the DNA sequences between different species, we finally found a way to look past those misleading physical traits and uncover the true, deep evolutionary relationships.
The basic principle here is actually quite simple. The more similar the DNA code is between two species, the more closely related they are. It just means they haven't had that much time to drift apart from their common ancestor. And on the flip side, the more differences you find in their DNA, the further and further back in time you have to go to find where their family trees connect.
But we can take it even a step deeper.
Think of DNA as the ultimate recipe book. That book contains the recipes for building proteins, and proteins are made out of building blocks called amino acids. So, if we compare the sequence of amino acids in the same protein from two different species, we're basically reading a direct translation of the DNA's instructions. It gives us this whole other powerful layer of evidence to back everything up.
This whole approach, looking at genes and proteins, is so powerful because it gets past all the surface-level stuff. It's kind of like comparing the actual source code of two computer programs instead of just looking at the icons on your desktop. It lets us figure out who's a recent cousin and who's a very distant ancestor with a kind of accuracy that just looking at physical traits could never, ever give us.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. We've gone from trying to sketch a rough map based on what we can see on the surface to having a super detailed scientific GPS that can trace the precise historical roots of evolution. It's a map of true ancestry.
You know, this genetic revolution has already completely rewritten parts of the tree of life. For instance, scientists always lumped hawks and falcons together. They look alike, they hunt alike, seems obvious. But genetics showed that falcons are actually more closely related to parrots. How wild is that? It just leaves you with this amazing question. As our technology gets even more powerful, and we keep decoding this book of life, what other unbelievable family connections are we going to find?